Middlesbrough are back to winning ways, and for supporters, perhaps there was nothing to worry about. After the start of the season, it was a frustrating little time that Middlesbrough went through during September in particular, with performances on the pitch not really being matched by results. But in the last week, victories over Stoke City and West Brom have put Middlesbrough back into a really strong position, back into the playoff contention, and really kind of restored confidence in Michael Carrick's team after a tricky few weeks. If you are enjoying these videos, please do hit like and hit subscribe as well. There's plenty more Middlesbrough content coming. But as far as Middlesbrough are concerned, things are really starting to look up now. It had looked a little bit iffy. I think going into that match against Sunderland at the Stadium of Light, that for me was a match where Middlesbrough could have really kind of made a statement, turned things around, and the fact that we went there and ended up losing to that Chris Rigg goal meant that it was perhaps a little bit worrying for supporters that things hadn't quite clicked into place yet. But what we've seen from Michael Carrick's team is a really positive reaction in the week that's followed. Obviously, a 2-0 victory over Stoke City at the Riverside was a great way to bounce back. And then midweek, we saw a victory over West Brom, thanks to Hayden Hackney's second goal in 2 games, to get a crucial win over Carlos Corberan's side, a side who have been looking really, really strong in the Championship. And for Middlesbrough, that maybe that was the statement victory that we needed, one that's moved us up to 6th in the table and really kind of shown what this team's sort of capable of. So what has Michael Carrick changed in order to get things back on track? Well, I think the first thing, I guess that he's changed in the last couple of weeks, but also since the start of the season, really, it's just been how solid we have been defensively. I think there's been a couple of errors in the first couple of months of the season, things that have proven to be particularly costly in those matches where we're kind of dealing with kind of fine margins. But even in the last week, they've kind of been eradicated a little bit more as well. What we've seen is that while there's been injuries at the back, Middlesbrough's defence has looked fairly robust. Going back to the Stoke game, you had George Edmondson in central defence. You had Luke Ayling alongside him, and you saw Anthony Dijksteel brought in at right back. Now, going back to the summer, Dijksteel looked like a player who was probably in his final knockings as a Middlesbrough player, someone who obviously is in the final year of his contract, someone who was kind of quite far down the pecking order. Michael Carrick didn't really seem to fancy him, but he came in against Stoke City and put in another really strong performance. On the few occasions that he has played for Middlesbrough this season, he's looked really, really good, and he's probably put in some of the best performances that he has in a Middlesbrough shirt, which has been really, really encouraging. He did very, very well in that game, and Middlesbrough were able to get the victory thanks to that 2-0 win. Which was great. Going into the West Brom game, obviously we had Ralph van den Berg back. Unfortunately for Dijksteel, that meant that he did drop out of the team. Michael Carrick suggested that that was a really, really quite heartbreaking kind of decision to make because of how good Dijksteel had been. But I think for Dijksteel, you've got to say that it's a testament to his character, how well he's done when he's come into the side, and the fact that he is proving that he can be a rather solid operator for Middlesbrough when he is called upon. But yeah, against West Brom, it was great to have Rav van den Berg back in defence, playing alongside George Edmondson. We all know how good Rav is. He's a player who I think is destined for the very, very top of the game. And for him to come in alongside George Edmondson was brilliant. We were really solid against a very strong team, a team with Josh Maja up front, who has been absolutely electric for West Brom. West Brom will be right up there by the end of the season, firmly in that promotion mix, whether it be for the automatics or for the top 6. So for Middlesbrough to go to the Hawthorns and get a victory was absolutely outstanding. And you've got to say that defensive performance that they put in at the Hawthorns was a really strong foundation for hopefully what Middlesbrough are going to be able to do over the coming weeks as they look to build a run of positive results. I mentioned it there, but one of the biggest factors in Middlesbrough's return to form this week has been the form of Hayden Hackney. Now, the midfielder endured a really frustrating time last season. It was really kind of expected to be the campaign where he kicked on. Obviously, he'd had his first season under Michael Carrick, where he'd established himself as a first-team player. Last season was probably going to be the one where he would kick on and prove himself to be one of the best players in the Championship. But injuries kind of derailed that. It meant that he was never really able to get true momentum in terms of his fitness and his form. And that meant that coming into this season, it was always going to be an interesting one to see how he got on. Now, obviously, he had a full pre-season under his belt. He's been fit since the start of the season, but perhaps in the first few weeks of the campaign, there was a question mark over just how sharp he was. He was still kind of feeling his way back in because, as we said last season, he did miss large chunks of the other season because of fitness issues. But I think what we've seen over the last week or so in particular is a player who's just really kind of clicking into gear. You're seeing a player who is fully fit, which is very important. He's getting up to match sharpness, which is great to see as well. It's that relationship with Aidan Morris in midfield as well. I think fans have been very excited about that since the very start, but there has been an element of fine-tuning needed, I guess, between those two to make sure that the balance is right in terms of holding on to the ball, but also covering defensively and making sure that they're offering the required support in attacking areas as well. And I think what we're seeing is that sort of dynamic really kind of coming to fruition at the moment. Aidan Morris is a player who he does largely like to sit deep. He likes to mop up in front of the defence. He likes to get the ball on the half turn, play those quick passes, nip in, dispossess the opposition. Kind of does the ugly work, but also kind of does it in a rather attractive way, you've got to say. He's a very good player, someone who's very easy on the eye. And I think because he does that sort of work, it does sort of free up Hayden Hackney to play what is his natural game, which is a slightly more advanced number 8 type of role. We've seen it in the last week against Stoke and against West Brom, that his instinct is to get forward. It is to get into the box where possible. And obviously against Stoke City, he scored that wonderful goal, which was absolutely outstanding, by the way. The way he picked up the ball and glided past a couple of defenders before welting it in the top corner. It showed just everything that Hayden Hackney's got to offer. He's more than just a good passer. He's not just someone who can thump the ball and find the top corner. He showed the finesse and the dribbling ability and the close control to take it past a couple of crunching challenges that were coming in for him. Dodge them and then put it in the top corner, which showed just how quality he is. And then against West Brom, it was a very different type of finish, I guess. But one which was equally as hard to pull off, really, as he looked to find the bottom corner of the net. So I think for Hayden Hackney, it's really good, and it's a really good confidence boost for him, the fact that he's starting to add goals to his game. I think that is what Hayden Hackney needs to do to take his game to the next level. If he is going to become one of the best players in the Championship, you do feel like he's someone who needs to be contributing 8 to 10 plus goals over the course of the season, and obviously getting 2 in the last week has been very important to that. It came out that he's been working very hard behind the scenes on his finishing ability. He's been working with Grant Ledbetter, one of Middlesbrough's coaches, on that finishing ability. I guess that the timing of his runs into the box, finding the bottom corner of the net, just making sure that everything is kind of on track to really kind of add himself as a goal scoring threat to the team. I know that Middlesbrough play with 4 sort of attackers when you've got Emmanuel Latilath and then the 3 people behind him, but Hayden Hackney is more than capable of offering a good amount of goals from a central midfield position, and the fact that he is now doing that, or that he has done it in the last week, is really encouraging. I personally do think that Hackney is more than capable of going on to score 8 or 10 goals this season, which would be a really big boost for Middlesbrough's promotion aspirations. And I think as far as he's concerned, he's someone who is really kind of destined for the top. He's an England under-21 international, someone who is in very good company, I guess, in terms of the players that he's playing alongside there, with a lot of players playing regular Premier League football in that England under-21 side. And you've got to feel that for Hackney, if he can continue this run of form, he's someone who is Premier League bound, really. Someone who will definitely be there, in my opinion, in the next 12 or 18 months. The hope for Middlesbrough is just that he will be there with Middlesbrough. If Middlesbrough can go up this season, then they'll be in a really strong position to hopefully keep hold of Hayden Hackney. But if he does enjoy a strong season and Middlesbrough fail to go up, then you would think that it might be a bit of a struggle for Middlesbrough to keep hold of him, because he is a player with a very high ceiling, someone who is destined for the Premier League. And so it's very important that Middlesbrough kind of match his ambitions by hopefully going up this season. But yeah, it's been a brilliant week for Hayden Hackney. He's been very important, and hopefully it's been the confidence boost that he needs to really kick on and start showcasing a really strong, consistent run of form as we move into the winter months. The next thing that Michael Carrick's got right over the last week is the setup of his attacking players. Now, over the last few weeks, it has been a little bit of a messy one, I guess, in terms of the way that our attacking side is set up. Emmanuel Atielath, he's been in a difficult situation. There was the ongoing transfer saga, I guess. Well, you call it a transfer saga. It was really only on transfer deadline day, but there was that situation with the interest from Ipswich Town and the fact that he travelled down late with the squad to Cardiff and then linked up with them, and then it's integrating him with the team. And I think he's endured a really difficult kind of couple of weeks because he's really been sort of under the spotlight from supporters who've been wanting to see exactly what it is that he has to offer. Middlesbrough also had Tommy Conway, who came in and he's looked really good in the matches that he's played. So it's been kind of cramming him into the team. There's also been lots of calls for Riley McGree to be playing on the left. So it's been a bit of a messy situation for Michael Carrick. There's been a lot of kind of dynamics at play in terms of selecting that front four. But what sort of ended up happening is that in the weeks before the upturn in form, it's kind of been putting square pegs in round holes, I guess, because what's happened is that Michael Carrick has been forced to play players who haven't necessarily been in form, but also players kind of like putting them into roles that they're not necessarily comfortable with. So Emmanuel Atielath was up front. Tommy Conway was then having to play as the number 10, which isn't really his natural role, even though he's been performing well. That then has a knock-on effect to Finn Azaz, who had to play out on the left flank. Obviously, on the right flank, you had Izzy Jones, who wasn't really looking quite himself in terms of form. But what we've seen over the last week against Stoke City and against West Brom was very much a sort of back to basics approach where you've got players playing in their natural roles. Obviously, Tommy Conway hasn't been available, which has been a blow because he is a good player and he is someone who I expect to come back into the starting 11 when he is fully fit and available. But what we've been able to do is been able to play Emmanuel Atielath as a centre forward. He's perhaps had more space to work with, given that Tommy Conway hasn't been in the team. Finn Azaz has been able to play in his number 10 role, and he looked really dangerous against West Brom. I do think he had a bit of a point to prove. He was part of the West Brom academy setup for a little while before he moved on to Aston Villa. And I think playing in that number 10 role really suits him. He loves dipping into those little spaces and causing problems. And you'd like to think that with him, just with his creativity and the positions that he gets into, he's a player who has the potential to score a fair few goals from that position as the season unfolds. He just needs to kind of click for him a little bit more. But with him playing at number 10, it's meant that Riley McGree has been able to come in on the left flank. Riley is probably Middlesbrough's most consistent quality attacking player, in my opinion. He's someone who has to be starting if he's fully fit. He's done that this week. He's started both games, which has been no coincidence really in terms of Middlesbrough's upturn in form. Yes, there's a question mark over his fitness. He is on his way back from injury, so that is something that Middlesbrough will need to manage, I guess, over the next couple of weeks. It'll be interesting to see whether he starts against Watford, for example, because that would be his third start in a week, which would be a big ask for someone who hadn't really played a lot of football before that. But what he does is really, really important for Middlesbrough. He plays on that left side, but he does also drift into the little pockets of space, kind of alongside Finn Azaz in that number 10 sort of role. He's not someone who gets in the ball and dribbles at defenders, but he plays some really good passing moves. He's kind of a bit of an orchestrator in getting the players around him moving into position. And he is a very, very talented player. What also happens is the fact that he does move inside. It does free up Neto Borges primarily as left back to kick on, almost act as a sort of left winger to provide that width in attack. And that's something which we've seen be very, very successful under Michael Carrick since he came in. Obviously, we had it with Ryan Giles in that first season. That was the way that we set up that season, which was hugely successful. We saw it a little bit last season. But again, it was a bit of a disjointed campaign with Riley McGree being injured. And then we've had Lucas Engel at left back, who hasn't quite hit the ground running since he joined Middlesbrough a year ago. But I think what we're seeing is that Riley McGree is just very, very important to Middlesbrough. And if he can stay fit, I do think that left-sided position is his to keep hold of, because he does offer something very different to other players. He's a natural fit in that role. And it does fit into the wider system, I guess, in terms of Neto Borges being given the license to move forward on the left flank. I think in addition to those three, the right side of midfield has been a big boost this week as well. We mentioned about Izzy Jones and how he hasn't really looked himself in the last few weeks. He's kind of been a bit reluctant to get his man. That's something that Michael Carrick's clearly identified as well, and that's meant that Ben Doak has been named in the starting 11 for the 2 matches against Stoke and West Brom. He looked dangerous against Sunderland when he came off the bench. He showed enough to me and to a lot of fans that to suggest that he was ready to start a couple of games. And he does just bring a real aggression to Middlesbrough's attacking play. Someone who's very, very confident in himself. Someone who's destined for a very bright future with Liverpool or elsewhere, depending on what happens at Anfield. But he's someone who this week has been very, very dangerous. Someone who really fits into that Middlesbrough attacking unit, and I think that's been a really massive part of why Middlesbrough have done so well this season, or this week rather. Doak has provided real balance on the right hand side, but then the fact that we have had Latilath, Finn Azaz and Riley McGree all playing in their natural position, in their best roles, it's been really, really fruitful. It's meant that everyone's known exactly what their responsibilities are in the team. No one's treading on each other's toes or getting in each other's way in the attacking third of the pitch, and it's been a really positive thing to see, because it's meant that we have been able to play our natural game. It's been a little bit back to basics, and it's meant that Middlesbrough have been able to get 2 wins in the last week, which has really, really got our season back on track. I'm really interested to know what you think about Middlesbrough's performances over the last week. Drop into the comments below. Let me know what your highlights have been over the last week. Also hit subscribe as well, because there's going to be plenty more content coming with regards to Middlesbrough and the wider EFL as well. So hit subscribe, hit like, and I will catch up with you next time.